Hey there, welcome back to another review, this time of the long-awaited, much-anticipated film review of Logan. Now, Logan, as you all know, is a 2017 film. It came out on March 3rd of this year, and it's a movie that a lot of people had actually asked my thoughts on, and it's a film that I was really anticipating. This was one of my most anticipated films of this year, and I actually saw it on opening weekend. I saw it on Sunday. I just wasn't able to record a review then, and I had planned on doing the X-Men stuff and getting all that done long before I am finally going to be able to finish it. But I had some things that came up, and I got a little bit sick, and that kind of derailed some things. And I'm still kind of getting over a little bit of a cold, so forgive me if I might, clear my throat or something like that. But anyway, Logan. Now, Logan is a film that I'm going to have to tell you right off the bat, you got to prepare yourself for. Kind of like what I said about Hacksaw Ridge. I was like, oh, you got to prepare yourself emotionally for that film. It's the same thing with Logan. This is a movie that will crush your soul. So keep that in mind. But at the same time, it's still a very rewarding experience despite the fact that it crushes your soul. Now, it doesn't crush your soul as much as some other films, but it's still a soul-crushing experience and a bittersweet film. And if you've seen the film, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And speaking of that, also want to let you guys and gals know, if there's any gals watching this video, that there will be spoilers in this video. I will let you know when there will be spoilers, so that way I'm not spoiling it for anybody. You can just skip the bits of the video where I'm talking about spoilers. But if you want my initial opinion right off the bat, just a short, quick opinion on the film, I really liked it. I thought it was a really good film. I didn't think it was a masterpiece. There are some problems I do have with it. But overall, it was a really satisfying movie that definitely did live up to my expectations in so many different ways. In some ways, it was kind of a letdown. But in other ways, it just was so amazing and so jaw-droppingly awesome that it made up for that. Those are just things that prevented it from being truly great or an instant classic for me. And I'll talk about those things more in depth soon enough. Now, Logan, it was a 2017 release. It actually did really well. It cost $97 million to make, and it has already made over $444 million in the box office. It has made a huge worldwide gross. It made a decent, I think it already made back its profit, made back its budget in the US. And and it's still counting. The profits are still coming for Logan. And after seeing the film, it absolutely deserves all of the money it's getting and then some. It's directed by James Mangold, who comes back to direct another Wolverine film. At first, I was very leery of this because of the Wolverine and how bad that movie was and how the action sequences were just completely dull, unexciting, and boring. And I was really worried because I was like, wow, the same guy who directed that is doing this. I don't know. But then I saw the trailers and I'm like, wow, I don't know where this James Mangold came from because he sure wasn't on display in the Wolverine in 2013. But apparently he's found a way to improve his skill set and has ended up becoming a good action director, a great action director. This actually features the best action sequences in all of the X-Men films, if you ask me. And I mean, it is absolutely impressive. So I'm glad he came back because he did a really good job. He did a fantastic job directing this film. Features a screenplay by Scott Frank, James Mangold, and Michael Green, based on a story by James Mangold. It's a solid script. Cinematography by John Matheson, the same cinematographer for X-Men First Class. Great pick. He does a great job here. It's edited by Michael McCusker and Dirk Westervelt. It features music, a score by Marco Beltrami, who also did music for the Wolverine. And it stars Hugh Jackman as Logan / the Wolverine. Patrick Stewart comes back as Professor X. Daphne Keane in her debut role absolutely just knocks it out of the park and delivers one of the most impressive first impressions I've seen from an actor or an actress in a long, long time here as Laura slash X-23. And you also have Boyd Holbrook, who plays a villain with a robot arm, which I don't even remember what the fuck his name was. It was honestly, he was one of the weaker parts of the film for me. Stephen Merchant plays a character named Caliban, who is friends with Logan and Professor X. He's a mutant who has the ability to sense other mutants. He also has, he's kind of vampire-ish. He's kind of like a vampire because he can't be exposed to sunlight because it actually burns him. You have Richard E. Grant in this as, I believe, Stryker's son, or, excuse me, somebody who's related to Stryker. Eric LaSalle is also in this in a bit role. He plays this guy who gives Logan and Professor X a place to stay in the film. You also have Elizabeth Rodriguez, who plays the caretaker of sorts for Laura, who has a few scenes earlier in the movie. Now, the development and pre-production of the film actually isn't that interesting, so I'm not going to cover it. I just want to say about that James Mangold from the very beginning wanted to do something very different with the sequel. He didn't want to have Logan be a film that was all about who will survive the end of the world type movie. He didn't want it to be like that. And Hugh didn't want it to be like that either. They wanted it to be a smaller picture. And in a lot of ways, that's what Logan is. It's definitely a smaller picture, but it's not small in terms of its impact. It has a really big impact on more than one instance and on more than one occasion. Now we get into my personal pros and cons of the film. This is where some of the spoilers might come into play. I'll probably say they won't come into play here in the pros. But in the cons section, there's definitely going to be some spoilers because in order for me to explain and to give you guys my full thoughts on the issues that I do have with the film, I'm going to have to spoil some things. So, and if you've seen the trailers, you already know what the plot is, and I'm not even going to go into that. If you want that, you can go into the plot synopsis and check that out for yourself. I'm trying to move away from that kind of thing when it comes to my reviews now, as you've seen lately. So anyway, here are my pros. I have an absolute plethora of pros here. The direction by James Mangold, it is as perfect as you can get for a film like this. I think he deserves an Oscar nod. Honestly, that's how great his direction is in this film. He captures the drama aspects perfectly down to a T. He just does an absolutely jaw-dropping, spectacular, amazing, awe-inspiring job with the action sequences. Whoever he hired for the fight choreographer or whatever he ended up doing to improve his action directing, I'm giving him a round of applause. Because if you've seen the film, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The action in this, when it is there, is fucking awesome. It's right up there with the kind of action sequences you'd see in films like John Wick or John Wick Chapter 2. Now, and instead of guns, instead of gun fu, it's claw fu. So you got some great claw fu scenes. The camera doesn't shake around. You can see all the action, and it doesn't pull any punches. It's an extremely viscerally violent film. It's one of the most gory, bloodiest movies I've seen in the theater in a long time. And I have to admit, it put a smile on my face finally seeing Logan, a Wolverine, take out his claws and dispense justice with his claws and slicing and dicing people. And there's actually blood and it's R-rated and he's fucking people up. It was great. It was a dream come true. It was just like, I felt the same way I did watching Wolverine and X-23 turn people into mincemeat. As much, I felt the same way as I did when I saw Deadpool for the first time, where I was like, hey, finally, it's happening. I was just grinning from ear to ear, not at the carnage, but kind of at the carnage, but but at the fact that I'm finally seeing this side of Wolverine, I'm finally seeing these type of action sequences, this type of action in an X-Men film, in a Wolverine movie, something that I had been waiting to see ever since X-Men Origins Wolverine, and definitely the Wolverine. I was so worked up, I'm spitting. I'm like, it's just because it just did so much. It's just, sometimes words can't express how phenomenal these action sequences are. Honestly. Um, the script I also thought was a really, like I said, it was solid. It's a solid script. I think there are some aspects of it that could be improved upon, and I'll talk about those later. But Scott Frank, James Mangold, and Michael Green, they did a good job creating a story that was interesting and different. And it wasn't like any X-Men film that I had seen before. And just like the direction does a great job capturing the emotions that are necessary to really make this story soar and to really make Logan have the impact that I was talking about earlier. Uh, the script does the same thing as well, because it does a great job with these dynamics, with the dynamic between Professor X and Logan, with the dynamic between Laura and Logan. Um, it could use a little work on some other things, but for the most part, with the drama, with the action, with the human elements of the script, it really is it really is a masterful work. The cinematography by John Matheson, like I said, it really does bring the best. It brings the most out of this particular type of film. There's all these desert sort of settings and all these sort of deserted sort of things, and it's a very dusty, dry, arid-looking movie at times. But the cinematographer ends up still bringing some sort of life to all of this, so it doesn't feel as dry and as dusty and is completely just empty visually as it easily could have. Um, it kind of captures this sort of dark beauty with these type of settings in the film. Uh, the editing by Michael McCusker and Dick Westervelt I thought was also a standout. It was definitely a great job by them. The makeup effects by Joel Harlow are mostly practical. You see a lot of practical effects in this film. I really appreciated that. Real blood, not CGI blood. There's a little bit of CGI blood, but if it is CGI, it's some of the best that I've seen lately. The claw marks and the claw rips and stuff. It's practical. Logan's wounds are practical. There's severed heads that are done practically. So yeah, I gotta give the makeup effects guy a big round of applause for that. Um, because he definitely had a lot of work to do and did a great job with it. The visual effects by Image Engine I also thought were really effective. Um, like I said, there are some scenes in it that are not practically done, but they're really well done regardless. Uh, I think some of the stuff with of course, Wolverine's healing factor and things like that, and some other headshots and things like that, those are CGI, but it's not bad looking CGI. Particularly, I liked how they showed the scenes where Professor X is causing the uh, area around him to freeze. And of course, it's a callback to the previous films in the franchise where Professor X would have this ability to pause time. And so the way that they shot those sequences I thought were really well done, and the visual effects in those sequences really did emphasize those scenes. It kind of reminded me of some of the scenes, the slow-mo scenes in Dredd, which is always a good thing. If you could be like Dredd 3D, I mean, please, more movies should be like Dredd 3D, if you ask me. I really liked the score of Marco Beltrami. I thought it was consistently great this time around, unlike the score from the Wolverine. I love the Western aspects of it. I love it seemed like there was kind of an Ennio Morricone thing going on here. Like it was inspired by Ennio's Morricone score for his Westerns. I swear I heard kind of a thing, the thing sort of vibe with some of the music, which was weird but at the same time, I thought it worked. It actually added to the film. It was a really beautiful score. Um, the performances by the cast, but specifically Hugh Jackman, this is his best performance as Wolverine, and honestly might be his best performance acting wise. Period. This is, I think he deserves an Oscar nod for this. In all honesty, Patrick Stewart was fun as cranky old Professor X. He and Hugh Jackman had a lot of great chemistry with one another and had some really heartwarming scenes with one another. Um, Daphne Keane, like I said before, a real standout. I can't wait to see what this kid does next. Stephen Merchant, I liked. He had this sort of sense of humor about him that I enjoyed. Um, I liked his charisma. Um, there's a particular line of dialogue where he's talking about, he's underground all the time, and he's basically going to be comparing himself in a situation to that of Nosferatu. Excuse me. Like I said, my voice starts to go or something like that. I'm still getting over this cold. So so he compares it to Nosferatu, which I thought was pretty funny. The R rating, I've seen some critics say it didn't need to be R. I respectfully disagree. It did need to be R. In order for the film to have the impact that it needed to have with its story and with the action, it needed to be R. I mean, when somebody's slashing you with adamantium claws, it's not going to be PG-13. There's not going to be, oh, just slash somebody and somebody just falls down. That's not what's going to happen. There's going to be blood. There's going to be guts. There's going to be stuff that's going to fly everywhere. It's not, it's going to be violent. And I really like the fact that it was R. That really made it so you had this amazing visceral hardcore violence, which I think was definitely probably the biggest highlight of the film, other than just the performances by the cast and the direction and the other aspects of the production that I mentioned that I liked. And you have the visceral hardcore violence, you had the great choreography with the action sequences, the drama was actually really effective. It actually affected me emotionally. I actually did tear up a few times while watching the film. So yeah, it's definitely more of it's kind of like it's a mix between a drama and a thriller. It's like a thriller drama. If you're expecting balls to wall action, that's not really what Logan is. So it's not a super action-packed film, but there are some really great action sequences in it. But they're pasted, they're separated out throughout the whole movie, throughout the running time. Now we get into the cons and we get into some spoilers. Once again, sorry about clearing my throat here. It's just a stupid cold I'm getting over. But anyway, some pacing issues. The movie's over 2 hours. It's like 2 hours and 20-something minutes. And there's like a point after the hour or hour and a half mark where it starts to drag a bit. And I really think they could have trimmed it up a bit in order to make the film go by at a quicker pace. Here is spoilers. Okay, this is where I'm getting into all kinds of spoilers, folks. So if you haven't seen the film, I would suggest skipping all this, skip to the end to see my rating, and so yeah, I will let you know when I'm done with spoilers and when I'm done with the cons, so that if you flip through this, you can be like, okay, he's done with the cons, he's done talking about the spoilers. All right, I'll go to this. I'll go to the conclusion to the review. I personally did feel the film was a bit too depressing and bleak. It was a bit too gritty and realistic. On one hand, I love that the film went where it went, but I think it went too far in some aspects, which do affect its rewatchability factor. Also, some of it feels a bit unnecessary. Some of it feels like it's a bit too much. It's like, okay, it's not all the way up to 11. They don't turn that dial up to 11. Like something like Alien 3, because the movie still has some moments of levity, with Professor X telling Logan off and be like, "Fuck you, Logan! Some fun stuff like that. I can't go while you watch. Don't worry, I'm not gonna watch. So there are some moments like that that break up the depressing bleakness of the film, which takes place in this future that's it's very post-apocalyptic. At least if you're in the desert, But if you're in the city, it actually looks pretty normal. But it's just there's this kind of overbearing bleakness about it that kind of ruins the fun of the film at points. It doesn't ruin it completely. It just kind of ruins the fun of it at points. And specifically, what I'm talking about is kind of how they handle Professor X and the whole X-Men aspect of the story. This is not a good X-Men sequel. In fact, this is a horrible X-Men sequel. And I understand the director was saying it's takes place in an alternate universe, and it's not. Yeah, even if it does take place in an alternate universe, this is still not a very good X-Men sequel. This is not the way that the X-Men deserve to go out. This is not the way that Professor X deserved to go out. And also, on one hand, I can deal with Professor X's death. On another hand, if I can get words to come out of my mouth correctly, on another hand, it's not needed. He already died before in X3. Did we really need to see Professor X die again? Especially in the depressing, sad way that he does. I mean, the last film that you see Patrick Stewart in as Professor X, at least to date anyway, he's this frail old man who has Alzheimer's or some brain disease that makes it so his brain, which was one of the most dangerous weapons in the world, is now diseased, and he's having seizures, and he's an invalid, and Logan has to take care of him, and he's putting people in danger because he's not taking his meds, and this whole sort of thing. And he does have his one last moment of peace in the house. He has a nice rest in a bed, in a nice warm bed. But then he has the realization that what he did in Winchester, and then he dies with the knowledge that possibly Logan killed him. He didn't know that it was, X-24. He just saw Claus, Logan, dead. I mean, they could have handled that better. And then Professor X gets buried like some dead dog in a ditch. I mean, that's just... I honestly think Professor X deserves better than that, don't you? Even in an alternate storyline. Even in an alternate timeline. Now, it's implied at what he did in Winchester, but the director pretty much confirmed what it was meant to be, but he didn't shoot the scene. And what it was is that Professor X had a seizure at the X Mansion and killed, like, all the X-Men, like, killed everybody in the mansion. And I'm like, because the whole thing is Professor X, remember, if he focuses on something hard enough, he can actually kill them. So that's what happened with the X-Men. And yeah, I'm not a fan of that, really. So I'm glad that scene wasn't shot, but the fact that it's still implied does bother me a little bit. But yeah, Professor X, it was nice to see the dynamic between Logan and Professor X. And I know Professor X is not going to live forever. I understand that. It kind of seemed like it was a shock death. It was like, boom, let's shock the audience. Oh, that's how they revealed X-24. And X-24 did kind of come out of nowhere, but at the same time, there were some subtle hints at X-24. If you paid attention, there were some. Like, there were some references in the videos that Logan was watching about the project, the transgen project or whatever. There were some hints at it. I noticed them. They're very subtle though, so if you're not paying attention, you can miss them. So I think that they could have fleshed that out more, so it didn't feel like, wow, Logan is evil now. What? Who the hell is this guy? Logan clone? What? So I can see why some people were kind of like, what the hell? So anyway, and another scene, another problem I had that kind of came directly after Professor X got killed is Eric LaSalle's character after he ends up helping out Logan and basically saves the day, prevents him from getting killed by X-24. He ends up he points the shotgun at Logan and then like pulls the trigger, but then he doesn't die. You know, Logan doesn't die because he doesn't have any bullets left, and then Eric LaSalle dies. I'm like, why was that there? Logan helped him out earlier. Why is he pulling the trigger? Because he thought he's a mutant. He knows he's a mutant now, and he was evil, or he thought, I don't know. It was kind of awkward. Um, so that wasn't really needed there. But like, and with Professor X again, he's not really necessary to the plot. I mean, yeah, you have this cool scene where he freezes time, and Logan has to uh, it's kind of a race against time, but in slow motion, where he's got to grab a syringe and inject it into Professor X so he can stop basically killing everybody. And Logan has he's using his claws in slow motion and fucks some guys up. It's a claw right through the top of the guy's head or in the side of his head, and that was cool. But at the same time, is it really necessary to this plot? Is Professor X really necessary to the plot of this film? I would say no. You know, it's a Wolverine solo film, so as much as I like Frankie O Professor X, I really don't like the whole thing where he dies. That kind of hurts his appearance in the movie for me. And so I would be like, oh, I'll just, why can't it just be about the dynamic between Laura and Logan? That's what it is. It's just Laura and Logan on a road trip trying to get to safety while these bad guys are hunting them. Really. Professor X, it was nice to see him. Patrick Stewart did a great job acting wise, but it was not a necessary character for this story, in my opinion. Uh, Also, I felt the movie lacked truly great villains. This is a problem with a lot of Marvel films lately. Baron Zemo, not Baron Zemo from Civil War, and you have the villain here. I mean, I don't even remember what the guy's name was. I don't even want to look it up because I don't care. He was some Cajun guy or something, or he had this accent that was off. And this guy Boyd Holbrook, he reminded me of Joel Kinnaman. That is not a good thing. When you give me flashbacks to Joel Kinnaman from RoboCop and Suicide Squad, no, not a good thing at all. Not a good sign. And he's going to be in The Predator. We'll see. And he wasn't even really Logan's villain anyway. He was more of Laura's villain and the other kids, the other mutant kids. It was more of their villain. And speaking of those, that's another thing I really liked about the movie, the action sequences with the kids. And when you see the film, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It's just as violent as the stuff with Laura. Like, this film does not pull any punches, man. It doesn't. It does not. But yeah, the villain was lame. He was a lame villain. He was just some bounty hunter guy with a robot arm. He might as well just, I don't know what the arm was for. It didn't show that it helped him in any way. He wasn't really a mutant. You had Stryker's son played by Richard E. Grant, who was just there. And you had a Wolverine clone, which, okay, alright, but he doesn't say anything. He's just basically a mute soldier. So, yeah, weak villains. Definitely could have used some better villains in this film. There weren't any villains with any charisma, personality. It was just that was definitely a problem I had with the movie, and it hurt the conflict because it's like these villains suck, but the action sequences made up for it. But at the same time, the villains still suck. And then the ending, which major spoilers here. I've already spoiled some stuff anyway. The ending, I personally feel, needed another rewrite or something, because it does feel a bit too cloying for my tastes. You have this whole stuff where Wolverine, I love the scene where Wolverine injects himself with a serum, and he's his old self again. That was really a great crowd-pleasing moment. And the way that Wolverine went out, the way that Logan went out, he went out fighting, he died a hero, But at the same time, I think this movie already killed off Professor X. It's already depressing and bleak enough with the inclination that Professor X killed all the X-Men with a seizure, and so it's like we don't really need Logan to die at the end of this film. Is it really necessary for in terms of the story? Not really. But at the same time, I could deal with Logan dying if that was the only person who died in the film. And I know a lot of people love the film and they think it's a masterpiece and it's a great movie because of that aspect of the story. But I just didn't feel like it was 100% necessary. And also the way it was handled is Wolverine has that awesome scene where he has a serum and then he goes up and fights X-24 and it's a one-sided affair and he gets basically saved by X-23. She uses a gun with the adamantium bullet in it and shoots X-24 in the head. It was a good looking effect. It was a nice headshot. At the same time, I'm like, why isn't Wolverine the one blowing the guy's head off? Why did she grab the gun and throw it to Wolverine? He grabs it, shoots him in the head. The kids then take some of the leftover serum that would probably be in the truck because X-24 was there, and they grab Logan and they try to tend and care to him. Maybe it looks like he's dead. He passes out, and then maybe you have the end scene as he wakes up. They're in a new compound together, the kids, and X-23 is there looking over him. And maybe you have a moment where he actually smiles because he realizes that I'm actually home. I have a purpose now in life. I have my heart in my hands. Things are looking up, and maybe he decides to start training the new uh, kids to be the new X-Men, to carry on Professor X's legacy. Because there's no one to carry on his legacy with the way that the film ends. Professor X just dies. Logan is the one that could carry on his legacy, but then he dies. X-23 doesn't know anything about the X-Men, doesn't know anything about how to train them, doesn't know anything about all of that except the stuff that she read in comic books. And another aspect of the ending, this was just really, really tacked on to me, where they have the funeral scene, you have the kids are all sad looking at the grave with Logan's grave, and then there's one kid, they cut to a scene and there's a kid who's holding a Wolverine figure. I'm like, that was just I mean, and he's wearing the costume and everything. I was just like, not necessary. It gave me bad flashbacks to RoboCop 3 when Nico holding a RoboCop figure. That kind of took me out of the moment. It's like, this is a sad scene. And what the hell is that kid doing there with a Wolverine action figure? Where did he get it? Where did it come from? What I don't. I know that's just a little nitpick, but it is something that I noticed. I did like the touch where they turned the cross into an X. I like that. Honestly, I think another thing I think the film missed, not really necessarily a con, but it might as well be, the movie missed "Hurt" by Johnny Cash. That was used to perfection in the teaser trailer, and it's not in the film. Then the film ends with the man comes around. And I think they should have used "Hurt" in some way in this film. I would have used an instrumental version of that in the funeral scene, because I think that would have been really powerful. So, would I prefer Logan to live at the end? Absolutely. But I don't hate it. I don't hate the ending because in a lot of ways, in a lot of other comics and a lot of the other X-Men films, Wolverine has said that if he were to die, he would like to die like a lone wolf on his own terms. He doesn't want to die being a martyr. He doesn't want to die sacrificing himself for all of humanity. He wanted to die in a way like this, a more human way. So I do feel that was actually rather poignant and actually was a fitting end to Logan's life. I mean, think about Logan. He's probably lived a long, long time. He's been through all these different wars and all these different things. He's in pain. He's suffering. The adamantium is poisoning his body slowly, day by day. He's not healing as much. I mean, he's thought about killing himself anyway in the film. So him dying doesn't really seem like it's necessarily a deal breaker for me, but it's just the way how things are sort of handled with this stuff with X-23 shooting X-24 in the head, and the whole sort of just it is pretty cloying, and I think they could have emotionally manipulative. That's for sure. I think they could have cut back on that a little bit. Um, and also, I mean, this death stuff. I mean, yeah, death comes for everybody. We get it. Is that the whole message of the film? Death comes for everyone. The man comes around. Doesn't matter who you are, mutant or human. Death comes. I'm like, yeah, we know that. I don't need a movie to tell me that. Um, but yeah, I mean, this kind of just this pall of death over the film. The movie ends with death, and I know there's. It's just depressing. It's sad. It's a sad film. That's what I mean by bittersweet. It's definitely a bittersweet film because of the way it ends and the way certain things are in the film and the plot and everything. But but I say bittersweet because there still are a lot of sweet moments in the movie. And some actually genuinely tender, heartwarming moments with Logan and Laura. That's why I wanted Logan to live, because I wanted more of those moments. And I just feel, and I think it was the director's choice. I don't think that was necessary. And I understand Hugh Jackman didn't want to play Wolverine again, and that's fine. It doesn't mean you have to kill him off. It doesn't mean Logan has to die. The more I think about it, I just think it's unnecessary. Like, I can kind of deal with it, but at the same time, I kind of can't, because I'm just like, is this necessary? Is it really necessary? Maybe all these times Logan was, well, he didn't have a reason to live, but now he does. So it's just one of those things. It's like, we didn't really need to go there. But that's Logan. Um, so the spoiler parts are over for those of you who skipped ahead, and here are my final thoughts on the film. I don't know what else to say about the film, except if I was going to rate Logan out of 5 stars, I give it 4 out of 5 stars, because those cons that I mentioned, I lump them all together into 1 star, because I can't say this is just an above average movie. The action sequences, all the other elements, all the other things that I mentioned earlier are so great and so well done that I can't be like, oh, it's just above average movie. No, because this movie got so much right. But what it didn't get right hurt the film for me. But I still really like the movie. I just don't think it's a masterpiece. I don't think it's flawless. I don't think it's the best Marvel film ever. And I don't think it's like the Dark Knight of Marvel movies. Because honestly, the Dark Knight ain't got shit on Logan. Because the Logan is darker and grittier than the Dark Knight could ever possibly dream of being. I don't get that comparison. Also, none of the action sequences in The Dark Knight even come close to the action in Logan. Um, it's better than The Dark Knight, if you ask me. But I'm not. I don't think it's the Dark Knight of Marvel films. I really don't. Why do we need to say that? It's just a great Marvel film. I wouldn't say, well, it's a really good Marvel film. It's a really good Marvel film. It tells a interesting, intriguing story. I just feel it's a story that I'm not going to want to experience or see told on screen over and over again, because of just those things that I mentioned earlier that brought the film down for me. But overall, though, I still highly recommend the movie if you haven't seen it yet. It's definitely worth a watch. It is without a doubt, hands down, the best Wolverine movie to date. And I mean, I may prefer something like X2 over this, because I think it's a more consistent film. It doesn't really have as many flaws for me personally as Logan does. It's definitely a better X-Men movie, but this is still a really good film, a nice shining moment for Fox. Hopefully Fox continues this. This is a nice run for Fox. Deadpool, Logan, and speaking of Deadpool, of course, Deadpool is in this film in a nice little, a little sort of trailer for Deadpool 2 that comes out that shows before the movie starts. I had to mention that briefly because I know people were mentioning, what about the Deadpool scene? I'm like, yeah, that was great. It was a lot of fun. I love that. I never thought I'd ever see two of my favorite things, Deadpool and the Superman score by John Williams, together in a film. I never thought I'd ever see that on screen in live action, but that trailer did it. That was wonderful. Um, but yeah, that's my thoughts on Logan. I hope you guys enjoyed the review, and as always, I will see you guys later. See ya.